Now, the case of Troy Anthony Davis has gained worldwide notoriety. Davis was convicted for the 1989 killing of an off-duty police officer and is currently on death row. The thing is, there was no physical evidence to prove Davis's guilt, and 7 of the 9 witnesses who originally identified Davis as the murderer have since recanted, some alleging police coercion and intimidation in obtaining their testimony. Now, the likes of Pope Benedict, Jimmy Carter, even Desmond Tutu have all called for justice in this case, and a new court ruling may have dimmed that hope again. Last year, the Supreme Court instructed a federal court judge in Georgia to consider significant evidence of Davis's innocence that surfaced after his original conviction. But now, a federal judge in Georgia has rejected all those claims of innocence. So what does that mean for the U.S. justice system? Well, here to discuss it with me is Christopher Chambers, Georgetown University professor and author of the blog Nat Turner's Revenge. Chris, thanks so much for being here. What do you make of this case? Do you think that this is an embarrassment for the U.S. justice system?
Oh, I think so. I mean, what's going on here is the Supreme Court playing ping pong with a man's life. I mean, not just Troy Davis's, but Officer McPhail's, who's the victim. I mean, you know, he's waiting for final justice in a way too.
And his family, yeah.
And his family, and they're playing ping pong here. I mean, they sent this back to this judge with this weird, you know, assignment to have him prove his innocence. I mean, and that's something that's unheard of. It's new, and it shows that there are the liberals and the conservatives on the court are really going to come together and bash heads on this. And now you have 2 Obama appointees on there. It's really going to get wild. And in the meantime, you have this man who's on death row, who's dealing with evidence of people who are recanting testimony. If that doesn't create, you know, if the jury had heard that, would there have been reasonable doubt? Very likely. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Well, I think the notion in this country is that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
And again, you know, this case is just so unbelievable. Like you said, 7 of the 9 witnesses have recanted. They've even admitted police intimidation here. There's no physical evidence. So it's amazing. You know, I mean, how do you fix this kind of a system?
I don't know. I mean, usually when this goes up to the Supreme Court, they say yay or nay. There's a death row appeal. There's some civil rights issue being implicated here. Here, they went through these weird machinations and sent it back to the court, not for a full new trial, but just for the judge to say, hey, prove to me you're innocent. What the judge actually is supposed to be doing is saying, what would a reasonable jury do if they heard this, you know, this new evidence? They didn't tell him that. They said, tell the defendant, the guy who's about to get a needle stuck in his arm, to prove that he's innocent. Well, when you're about to take a life, and I know, I mean, there's another side to this. There is other evidence. There's Officer McPhail to think about. But when the state's about to take a life, you got to have all your T's crossed and I's dotted. There are people in the Supreme Court now, you know, Clarence Thomas and Judge Scalia, who basically said, well, if you put an innocent man to death, you know, c'est la guerre, as the French say. I mean, if you can check off a certain list, you know, that's too bad. Well, you've got them on one side, another group on the court on the other, and they're really bashing heads on this. And the result is going to be bad for Troy Davis.
That's what's so amazing to me, too, is why the Supreme Court in America has never, ever ruled on a case as to whether or not it is constitutional to put someone, you know, to put an innocent person to death.
Well, the judge in this case actually did say it's against the 8th Amendment to put an innocent person to death. But here, Troy Davis isn't innocent. So he's playing a little game here, and the federal judge in this case, I don't blame him because the court put him in the middle of this. Now they're going to have to kick it back to them, and they're going to have to really fight it out. They don't want to do that because the conservatives, obviously, they want to keep the integrity of the system. The liberals on the court either want to do away with the death penalty entirely or make it much more harder to put a man to death. It should be hard to put somebody to death.
I agree, you know, and I think that's probably why this case has gained so much international notoriety as well. Because essentially, you know, in my opinion, it looks like our system just plays games with people's lives. I mean, this man has already had 3 different execution dates set.
Exactly.
One time he was 2 hours away from lethal injection, you know, so that shows you how we treat
Well,
people in life.
Exactly. I mean, and this case is so convoluted in that regard that it's hard to cover it. I mean, the mainstream media kind of pulls back and puts it in the box of black man kills white cop, and it's been going on for 20 years. But there's all these weird legal issues going on, and part of it's because of the court.
It's about the bigger picture. It's about our system. But
Exactly.
I just wonder, why do you think that the fact that the Pope, that Jimmy Carter, former president, that Desmond Tutu, that all these people have called for justice in his case, you know, why does that hold no bearings?
Because there is no physical evidence, because it's based on eyewitness testimony, which is the most notoriously bad form of proof. And then these people say, well, you know what, maybe I didn't see him. That maybe is enough to say, look, you might not be guilty, but you definitely we're not going to put you to death. And people like the Pope are saying, if you're going to respect human life, due process and things like that, if you have eyewitness testimony that's being recanted, hey, I didn't see him, or the cops made me say it, you have to let him go,
yeah,
or you at least give him a whole new trial.
It's a murky case, but it definitely shows, you know, that there are issues that need to be addressed in our system, especially when it comes to taking lives. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
What's up, America? Y'all know who this is. Dropping it. In Atlanta, Georgia, a U.S. parole board has denied clemency to Troy Davis, clearing the way for his execution Wednesday in the case that has become an international cause for death penalty opponents. Davis was convicted of the shooting death of an off-duty police officer who intervened in a brawl in the parking lot in Savannah, Georgia in 1989. But there was no physical evidence, and several witnesses later recanted their testimony. The campaign to spare his life drew high-profile support from former U.S. President Jimmy Carter and Pope Benedict, helping Davis escape 3 previous dates with death during more than 2 decades of legal maneuvering. All avenues now appear exhausted as Georgia's governor does not have the power to stay executions. An expert said any last-minute filings to the state courts or the U.S. Supreme Court will likely prove unsuccessful. The Georgia State Board of Pardons and Paroles considered the Davis appeal on Monday in the state capital, Atlanta, and deliberated overnight before announcing its decision. The board denied clemency. Barring any unexpected turn of events, Davis will be put to death by lethal injection on Wednesday at a prison in Jackson, south of Atlanta. Davis has repeatedly claimed his innocence, and his supporters point out a corrupted justice system in the Deep South, saying a black man was wrongly and hastily convicted of killing a white police officer. I am utterly shocked and disappointed at the failure of our justice system at all levels to correct a miscarriage of justice. This was said by Davis' attorney Brian Kamer. Allowing a man to be sent to death under an enormous amount of cloud of guilt is an outrageous affront to justice, said human rights watchdog Amnesty International. The case against Davis unraveled a long time ago. 7 out of the 9 original state witnesses recanted or changed their original testimonies, some alleging police coercion. 10 people have pointed to one of the remaining witnesses as the actual killer. There's no murder weapon that links Davis to the crime. Any notion of physical evidence that demonstrates Davis' guilt has been debunked. No innocent person should ever be put to death, and it is unconscionable and unconstitutional to carry out an execution, whereas in Troy Davis' case, especially when significant doubt exists. Man, it's a damn shame that we sat back and we allowed this to happen. Especially when evidence appears that this man is innocent. Unfortunately, this has been happening for years here in the United States of America. And many of us have sat down and allowed this to happen to a lot of our young sons and daughters. Just think about this tomorrow when this man is being executed. And on that note, I teach and I don't preach. Peace.